I still remember that Tuesday morning like it was yesterday. Not because anything special was supposed to happen, but because of what actually did happen. Sometimes life throws situations at you that you never see coming. And this was one of those days. Let me take you back to where it all started. I had been working as a software developer for almost 6 years at that point. 6 long years of late nights, early mornings, missed dinners, and weekend work. I'm not complaining because I knew what I signed up for when I chose this career. But I'd be lying if I said it wasn't exhausting. The thing about working in tech is that the grind never really stops. There's always another project, another deadline, another problem that needs fixing at 2 in the morning. But through all of that, I had one thing going for me. Every flight I took for work, every business trip to meet clients, every conference I attended, I was racking up airline miles. It wasn't intentional at first. I just signed up for the rewards program because someone told me it was a good idea. Then over the years, those miles started adding up. Thousands became tens of thousands, and tens of thousands became something actually useful. I never really thought about using them until I got the phone call from my sister. It was a Wednesday evening, and I had just gotten home from work. My phone rang, and when I saw my sister's name on the screen, I knew something was wrong. She never called unless it was important. We usually just texted each other memes and random updates about our lives. "Hey, what's up?" I answered, trying to sound casual, even though my heart was already beating faster. "It's Mom," she said, and I could hear the worry in her voice. "She's in the hospital. They say she needs heart surgery." Everything after that became a blur of phone calls, research about medical procedures, and trying to figure out how to get home as fast as possible. My mom lived in Chicago, and I was all the way in Los Angeles. We weren't rich growing up. My mom raised me and my sister on her own after my dad left when I was 7. She worked 2 jobs most of my childhood just to keep food on the table and a roof over our heads. The woman sacrificed everything for us. Now she was lying in a hospital bed waiting for surgery. I had to be there. When I looked at flight prices, my heart sank. Last-minute tickets were expensive, and I was still paying off student loans from college. That's when I remembered the miles. I logged into my account and saw that I had enough for a first-class ticket. I had never flown first class in my life. It always seemed like something for rich businessmen and celebrities, not regular people like me. But you know what? I decided to treat myself. Maybe it sounds silly, but I was stressed, scared for my mom, and exhausted from work. The idea of having a comfortable seat, some peace and quiet, and maybe a decent meal on the plane sounded like exactly what I needed. So I used my miles and booked that first-class ticket. The day of the flight came. I woke up at 4 in the morning to get to the airport on time. I threw on what I always wear when I travel, a comfortable hoodie, my favorite pair of jeans, and some sneakers. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I just wanted to be comfortable for the 4-hour flight. Getting through security was smooth. I grabbed a coffee from one of the airport shops and made my way to the gate. When they announced that first-class passengers could board, I felt a little flutter of excitement mixed with nervousness. I had never been in that group before. Usually, I was in the last boarding zone, squeezing my way down the aisle while everyone else was already settled. Walking onto the plane and turning left instead of right felt strange. The first-class cabin was like a different world. The seats were massive, almost like recliners. There was actual space between rows. A flight attendant smiled at me and asked if she could take my bag. I almost said no out of habit because I was so used to stuffing my backpack under the seat in front of me. I found my seat, 3A, right by the window. I settled in and just took a moment to appreciate it. The leather was soft. There was a little screen in front of me that was bigger than my laptop. They had already placed a bottle of water and a small pillow on the seat. It felt fancy, and I'm not going to lie. I felt a little out of place. But I reminded myself that I had earned this. Those miles came from years of hard work and travel. The cabin slowly filled up with other passengers. Most of them looked like what I expected, men and women in business attire. Some already typing away on laptops before the plane even took off. A few of them glanced at me, and I could tell they were wondering what I was doing there. My hoodie and sneakers probably didn't fit the image they had of first-class passengers. but nobody said anything, and I didn't let it bother me. I was looking out the window, watching the ground crew load luggage onto the plane when I heard it. A voice that was loud, sharp, and filled with the kind of entitlement that makes your skin crawl. "Excuse me, where is the flight attendant? I've been standing here for 30 seconds and nobody has offered to help me with my bag." I turned to look, and that's when I saw her for the first time. She was probably in her mid-50s, maybe older. It was hard to tell. Her hair was blonde, perfectly styled like she had just walked out of a salon. She had sunglasses pushed up on her head even though we were inside an airplane. Her outfit looked expensive, one of those matching sets that you see in magazines. She was dragging a designer carry-on behind her, the kind with the logo printed all over it so everyone knows how much it costs. But it wasn't her appearance that caught my attention. It was the way she carried herself. There's a certain look that some people have, like they believe the entire world exists to serve them. Like every person they encounter is either useful or in their way. She had that look. A flight attendant rushed over to help her, apologizing, even though there was nothing to apologize for. The woman handed over her bag like it was contaminated. Barely looking at the attendant as she did it, I turned back to the window, hoping that whoever this woman was, she was sitting far away from me. I was wrong. I heard her footsteps getting closer, and then they stopped. Right next to my row, excuse me. I looked up, and she was staring down at me with an expression that I can only describe as disgusted. Like she had just stepped in something unpleasant and was trying to figure out how to deal with it. "Yes," I said, keeping my voice polite. "You're in my seat." Confused. I looked at my boarding pass again, even though I had already checked it 3 times. 3A. Window seat. That's what it said. "I don't think so," I replied, holding up my boarding pass. "This is 3A, and that's my seat." She didn't even look at the boarding pass. Her eyes were fixed on me, scanning me from head to toe. I could almost see the thoughts running through her head. The hoodie, the jeans, the sneakers. In her mind, I didn't belong here. "That's impossible," she said, her voice getting louder. "I specifically called the airline last week and requested this exact seat. The window seat. 3A, this is my seat." A few heads started to turn in our direction. The businessman across the aisle lowered his newspaper. The couple in the row behind me stopped their conversation. "Ma'am, I understand there might be some confusion," I said, trying to stay calm. "But I booked this seat. It's right here on my boarding pass. Maybe you should check your ticket." She finally pulled out her boarding pass and glanced at it. I could see from where I was sitting that it said 3C, the aisle seat. Same row, different seat. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "There's obviously been a mistake. I never sit in aisle seats. I have a medical condition. I need the window seat." I didn't know what kind of medical condition required a window seat specifically, but I wasn't about to argue about that. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and I genuinely meant it. "But this is my assigned seat. Maybe the flight attendant can help sort this out?" Her eyes narrowed. "Oh, I see what's happening here. You probably snuck up here from economy, didn't you? Thought you'd try your luck and steal a first-class seat?" I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Not because the accusation was true, but because of what she was really saying. She wasn't just questioning my seat. She was questioning my right to be there at all. Because of how I looked, because of what I was wearing, because I didn't fit her idea of what a first-class passenger should be. "No, ma'am," I said, keeping my voice steady even though my hands were starting to shake. "I didn't sneak anywhere. I booked this seat with my own miles. Miles that I earned over 6 years of flying with this airline." She let out a laugh that had no humor in it. "Miles. Right? And I'm supposed to believe that?" The flight attendant appeared next to us. She was a professional-looking woman, probably in her 40s, with a calm expression that told me she had dealt with difficult passengers before. "Is everything okay here?" she asked. "No, everything is not okay," the woman in front of me said, practically shouting now. "This person is in my seat, and he's refusing to move. I want him removed. Immediately." The flight attendant, whose name tag said Diane, looked at both of our boarding passes. She compared them carefully, then looked back at the woman. "Ma'am, your seat is 3C, the aisle seat. This gentleman is correctly seated in 3A." That's wrong. The woman's voice had reached a pitch that made people wince. I was promised this seat. I am a loyal customer of this airline. I have been flying with you people for 20 years. And you're going to let this, she gestured at me like I was a piece of trash, sit in the seat that I requested? I sat there, frozen. Part of me wanted to get up and just give her the seat to make this whole nightmare stop. But another part of me, the part that remembered all those late nights at work, all those miles earned one flight at a time, all those years of working hard to get ahead, that part of me refused to move. This was my seat. I had earned it. And I wasn't going to let anyone take it from me. Not today. But as I looked at the fury in this woman's eyes, I had a feeling that things were about to get a whole lot worse before they got better. And I was absolutely right about that. The flight attendant, the one with the name tag that said Diane, was trying her best to stay professional. I could see it in her face. That forced smile that people in customer service learn to put on when they're dealing with someone impossible. She had probably seen hundreds of difficult passengers over the years, but something told me this woman was testing even her patience. I understand you're frustrated, Diane said in that calm, measured voice that flight attendants are trained to use, but the seating assignments are correct. Your ticket is for 3C, which is the aisle seat right here. It's still in first class, and you'll have the same service and amenities. The woman's face turned a shade of red that I didn't even know was possible. It was like watching a kettle about to boil over. Her hands were clenched into fists at her sides, and her perfectly manicured nails were digging into her palms. I don't think you understand who you're talking to, she said, and her voice had dropped to something low and dangerous. I am not some random passenger you can just brush off. I have been a loyal customer of this airline for over 2 decades. 2 decades. I have spent more money on flights than you probably make in a year. And you're telling me that I have to sit in an aisle seat while this person, she jabbed her finger in my direction, gets to sit by the window? I stayed quiet. I had learned a long time ago that sometimes the best thing you can do in a confrontation is nothing at all. Let the other person talk. Let them show everyone who they really are. And boy, was this woman showing everyone exactly who she was? The other passengers in first class were no longer pretending not to notice. The businessman across the aisle had completely given up on his newspaper. He was watching the whole thing like it was a movie. An older couple a few rows back were whispering to each other and shaking their heads. And I noticed a younger guy, maybe in his 30s, had taken out his phone and was holding it in a way that made me think he might be recording. Diane took a deep breath. Ma'am, I apologize for any inconvenience, but I cannot ask another passenger to give up their correctly assigned seat. If you'd like, I can make a note in your account about your seating preference for future flights. But for this flight, 3C is your assigned seat. Make a note. The woman laughed, but it was an ugly sound. Make a note? Do you think I'm going to fly with this airline ever again after this treatment? I want to speak to your supervisor. Actually, no. I want to speak to the captain. Right now, Captain is preparing for departure, ma'am. He's not available to discuss seating arrangements. Then make him available. I could feel the tension in the cabin rising. Everyone was uncomfortable. The air felt thick with awkwardness and secondhand embarrassment. I almost felt bad for Diane, who was clearly doing everything she could to handle the situation without making it worse. But then the woman turned her attention back to me, and any sympathy I had for anyone except myself disappeared. You, she said, pointing at me like I was a misbehaving dog. I don't know what game you're playing, but I know your type. You've probably found some way to cheat the system. Maybe you stole someone's miles. Maybe you hacked into the airline's website. I don't know how you did it, but people like you don't belong in first class. People like me. Those 3 words hit me harder than I expected. I knew what she meant. She wasn't talking about people who wear hoodies on airplanes. She wasn't talking about people who look tired from working too hard. She was talking about something else entirely. Everyone in that cabin knew it too. I felt a fire starting to build in my chest. The kind of anger that comes from being judged for things you can't control. From being looked at and dismissed before you even open your mouth. I had dealt with this kind of thing before, but it never got easier. It never stopped hurting. But I didn't yell. I didn't stand up and get in her face. I just looked at her, steady and calm, and said, "Ma'am, I'm a software developer. I've worked for the same company for 6 years. I travel for work at least twice a month. Every single one of those flights, I earned miles. I saved those miles for years because I never had a reason to use them. Now I do. My mother is in the hospital waiting for heart surgery, and I'm flying home to be with her. I used my miles to book this seat. So no, I didn't steal anything. I didn't hack anything. I earned this, and I'm not moving." For a split second, I thought I saw something flicker in her eyes. Maybe it was surprise. Maybe it was embarrassment. Maybe, just maybe, it was a tiny hint of shame. But if it was there, it disappeared as quickly as it came. "Oh, please," she said, rolling her eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck. The sick mother story. How original. Do you think I was born yesterday? Everyone has a sob story when they want something they don't deserve. I heard someone gasp behind me. I think it was the older woman from the couple a few rows back. Even the businessman across the aisle looked shocked. He seemed like the type who had seen everything. Diane stepped in again, her professional composure starting to show cracks. "Ma'am, I really need you to take your seat now. We're about to close the cabin door, and you're blocking the aisle." "I'm not blocking anything. He's the one causing the problem by refusing to do the right thing and give up a seat he clearly doesn't deserve." "The right thing?" I couldn't help it. The words came out before I could stop them. "The right thing is for me to give up something I earned because you didn't get what you wanted. How does that make any sense?" She stepped closer to me, and for a second I thought she might actually try to hit me. "Don't you dare talk back to me. Do you know who my husband is? He's a senior partner at one of the biggest law firms in Chicago. One phone call from me, and I could make your life very, very difficult." "Ma'am, please," Diane said, her voice firmer now. "I need you to sit down immediately, or I will have to call the air marshal." That word, air marshal, seemed to finally get through to her. She froze for a moment, processing what Diane had just said. I could see the wheels turning in her head. She was calculating whether to push further or back down. She chose a third option. "Fine," she spat. "I'll sit in the aisle seat. For now, but this isn't over. I'm going to file a complaint with the airline. I'm going to file a complaint with the FAA. I'm going to make sure that everyone knows how badly I was treated today. And you," she looked at me one more time, "I hope you enjoy that seat. Because when I'm done, you're going to wish you had just gotten up when I asked nicely." Asked nicely? At what point had she asked nicely? I must have missed that part between the accusations of theft and the threats about her lawyer. Husband, she made a big show of sitting down in seat 3C, sighing dramatically like she was being forced to sit on a bed of nails instead of a first-class leather seat. She pulled out her phone and immediately started typing furiously. It's probably already composing her complaint emails. Diane gave me an apologetic look. "I'm so sorry about that, sir. Please let me know if you need anything during the flight." "Thank you," I said, and I meant it. She had handled the whole thing better than most people would have. "I'm sorry you had to deal with that." She smiled, a real smile this time, and moved on to help other passengers. I thought it was over. I really did. I turned back to the window, trying to slow my racing heart and calm my nerves. My hands were still shaking slightly from the confrontation. I'm not someone who likes conflict. I avoid it whenever I can. But sometimes you can't avoid it. Sometimes it finds you whether you want it or not. The cabin door closed, and the captain came on the speaker to welcome everyone aboard. We started to push back from the gate, and I finally let myself relax a little. We would be in the air soon. The woman would be stuck in her seat for 4 hours, unable to cause any more scenes. I could put on some headphones, maybe watch a movie, and try to forget that this whole thing had happened. I was wrong. About 20 minutes after takeoff, when the seatbelt sign was turned off and the flight attendant started preparing for the first-class meal service, I heard her voice again. "Excuse me." "Excuse me," I didn't turn around. I didn't want to engage, but I could hear everything. "I need to speak to whoever is in charge of this flight," she was saying to another flight attendant, a younger man who had just come through with the beverage cart. The way I have been treated today is absolutely unacceptable. I was humiliated. I was disrespected. And I was forced to give up my seat to someone who clearly does not belong in this cabin. The young flight attendant looked confused. Ma'am, I'm sorry, but what seems to be the problem? The problem is that I paid good money for a first-class ticket. I was given an aisle seat instead of the window seat that I specifically requested. And when I tried to rectify the situation, your colleague threatened to call the air marshal on me. Like I'm some kind of criminal, I see. Let me get the lead flight attendant for you. No, I don't want to talk to her again. I want to talk to someone with actual authority. Is there a supervisor on this flight? Someone from corporate? Anyone who can actually do something instead of just standing there looking useless? I could feel her eyes on the back of my head. Even without turning around, I knew she was staring at me, blaming me, hating me for existing in a space she had decided I didn't deserve to occupy. The businessman across the aisle caught my eye. He gave me a small nod like he was saying, "Hang in there." It was a tiny gesture, but it meant something. It meant that not everyone on this plane was like her, that some people could see what was really happening here. The woman kept going. She complained about the airline. She complained about the seat. She complained about the food options, even though she hadn't even seen them yet. She complained about the temperature, the air quality, the noise from the engines. Every few minutes, she would find something new to be upset about. And every few minutes, she would make some comment that was clearly directed at me. She would say things like, "Some people have no class," or "This is what happens when you let just anyone into first class loud enough for me to hear." She wanted me to react. She wanted me to turn around and engage so she could create another scene. I didn't give her the satisfaction. But even as I sat there, staring out the window at the clouds below, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. The way she had looked at me, the threat she had made about her husband, the lawyer, the promise that she was going to make my life difficult. Something told me that this woman wasn't the type to let things go. And as the flight continued, I noticed something else. The young guy who had been holding his phone earlier, the one I thought might be recording, he was definitely recording now. He had positioned himself so that he could capture both me and the woman, and his phone had been out for the last 15 minutes. I didn't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing. I didn't know that in a few hours, that video would change everything. But right then, all I could do was sit in my seat, the seat I had earned, and wait for whatever was coming next. Because with this woman, I had a feeling the worst was yet to come. The meal service had started, and I was trying my best to focus on the menu in front of me. First class apparently meant you got choices. Grilled chicken with roasted vegetables or pasta with cream sauce. A small salad to start. Fresh bread with real butter, not those tiny plastic packets you get in economy. Under normal circumstances, I would have been excited about this. It was my first time experiencing anything like it, but I couldn't enjoy it. Not with her sitting 2 feet away from me, radiating hostility like a space heater radiates warmth. Every few seconds, I could feel her glaring at the side of my head. It was like having a mosquito buzzing around your ear that you can't swat away. I ordered the chicken and tried to eat, but my appetite was mostly gone. The food was good, probably the best airplane food I'd ever had, but it tasted like cardboard in my mouth. My stomach was tied up in knots from the stress of the situation. About halfway through the meal, things took another turn. The woman had been relatively quiet for maybe 15 minutes, which I now realize was just her recharging for round 2. She finished whatever she was typing on her phone, put it down, and then did something I wasn't expecting. She pressed the call button. The little chime echoed through the cabin, and a moment later, the lead flight attendant, Diane, appeared at her row. "Yes, ma'am. How can I help you?" The woman smiled. It was the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. The kind of smile that makes you feel cold even when you're not. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice suddenly sweet and reasonable. A complete change from how she had been acting before, and I realized that I may have overreacted earlier. I apologize for any disturbance I caused. Diane looked surprised, but relieved. "Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate that. Is there anything I can get for you?" "Actually, yes. I was wondering if there's any way we could work something out regarding the seating situation." You see, I really do have a medical condition that requires me to sit by the window. I get terrible anxiety when I can't see outside. It helps me stay calm during the flight. I almost choked on my chicken. Medical condition? Anxiety? This woman had been screaming at everyone in sight for the past hour. She didn't seem anxious. She seemed like someone who was used to getting whatever she wanted and couldn't handle being told no. Diane hesitated. I understand, ma'am. But as I mentioned before, the gentleman in 3A has a valid ticket for that seat. I can't ask him to move. Oh, I'm not asking you to force him, the woman said, still using that fake sweet voice. I'm just wondering if perhaps there's some kind of compensation we could offer. Maybe some extra miles for his account? Or a voucher for a future flight. I'm sure he would be willing to move if there was something in it for him. She said something in it for him like I was a dog that could be lured with treats. Like my principles, my dignity, could be bought for a few airline miles. Diane looked at me, clearly uncomfortable. Sir, would you be interested in? No, I said. I didn't even let her finish. I'm fine where I am. Thank you. The woman's sweet facade cracked for just a second. I saw her jaw tighten and her eyes flash with anger. But she recovered quickly. I see, she said. Well, I tried to be reasonable. I tried to find a solution that worked for everyone. But clearly, some people are just determined to be difficult. She said it loud enough for everyone around us to hear. She wanted witnesses. She wanted people to think that she was the reasonable one and I was the problem. Diane excused herself, probably grateful to get away from the situation. I went back to my food, even though I had completely lost my appetite by this point. That's when the woman started talking to the passengers around her. Can you believe this? She said to the businessman across the aisle. I offer to compensate him, to give him free miles, and he refuses. What kind of person turns down free miles? The businessman looked uncomfortable. He gave a non-committal shrug and went back to his laptop, clearly not wanting to get involved. But the woman wasn't deterred. She turned to the older couple behind her. I'm sorry you've had to witness all of this, she said, playing the victim. I've been flying for over 20 years, and I have never been treated this way. All I wanted was my window seat, the seat I specifically requested. Is that so unreasonable? The older woman in the couple surprised me. She looked at the woman in 3C and said, Actually, dear, I think the young man has been very patient. He has a valid ticket for his seat. I'm not sure why you feel entitled to take it from him. I could have hugged that woman. I really could have. The woman in 3C looked like she had been slapped. Her mouth opened and closed a few times, like a fish out of water. She clearly hadn't expected anyone to push back. Entitled. She repeated. Entitled? I am not entitled. I am a paying customer who has been treated like garbage. There's a difference. We're all paying customers, the older woman said calmly. That doesn't give any of us the right to treat others poorly. The woman in 3C turned red again. That same boiling kettle look from before. She turned back around in her seat, muttering under her breath about people who don't understand how things work and the decline of customer service in this country. For a few minutes, things were quiet. I actually started to hope that maybe the older woman's words had gotten through to her. Maybe she would finally let it go, and we could all finish this flight in peace. I should have known better. About 20 minutes later, the woman got up from her seat. She said she needed to use the restroom, which was at the front of the first-class cabin. But instead of walking straight there, she stopped at my row. She stood there, looking down at me with an expression of pure contempt. You think you've won something here, don't you? She said quietly, so only I could hear. You think you're some kind of hero, standing your ground against the mean lady? But let me tell you something. People like you don't get to win. Not in the real world. My husband has connections you can't even imagine. Lawyers, judges, politicians. One word from me, and I could make your life a living nightmare. I looked up at her. I was tired. Tired of the confrontation, tired of the threats, tired of being treated like I was less than human because of how I looked. Ma'am, I said, keeping my voice steady, I don't want to win anything. I just want to sit in my seat, fly to Chicago, and see my mother. That's all. I'm not trying to make your life difficult. I'm just trying to live mine. She leaned in closer. Your mother, right? You keep bringing that up like it's supposed to make me feel sorry for you. Let me tell you something. Everyone has problems. Everyone has a sick relative or a sad story. That doesn't mean you get special treatment. That doesn't mean you get to take things that belong to other people. I didn't take anything, I said. This seat was assigned to me. I booked it fair and square. Fair and square? She repeated mockingly. It's nothing about you being in first class is fair or square. Look at you. You look like you should be in the cargo hold, not up here with the rest of us. The fact that they even let you on this plane is a disgrace. I felt something break inside me, not in a dramatic way, not in a way that made me want to yell or fight. It was more like a wall crumbling. All the anger, all the hurt, all the exhaustion from dealing with this woman just collapsed into something else, something like sadness, because I realized that nothing I said would change her mind. Nothing I did would make her see me as a human being. In her eyes, I was already guilty. Guilty of existing in a space she had decided belonged to people who looked like her, acted like her, came from the same world as her. I'm sorry you feel that way, I said, and I meant it. It's not because I had done anything wrong, but because it must be exhausting to carry that much hate around inside you. To look at a stranger and see an enemy instead of a person, she seemed thrown off by my response. She had expected me to fight back, to give her more ammunition. Instead, I had just let it go, whatever she said, straightening up. Just remember what I said. This isn't over. She walked to the restroom, and I let out a breath I didn't know I had been holding. The guy with the phone, the one who had been recording earlier, caught my eye. He was a few rows behind me, and he gave me a thumbs up. I wasn't sure what that meant exactly, but it felt like support. Like someone was on my side when the woman came back from the restroom. She didn't stop at my row again. She just sat down in her seat and pulled out a magazine, flipping through the pages aggressively. Every flip was like a statement. Every rustle of paper was a reminder that she was still angry, but she didn't say anything else to me directly. Not for a while, at least. The flight continued. We were somewhere over the middle of the country. Thousands of feet above farms and small towns and highways that looked like tiny ribbons from up here. I watched the clouds drift by outside my window and tried to think about my mom. About how scared she must be waiting for surgery. About how much I wanted to be there, to hold her hand and tell her everything was going to be okay. That's what mattered, not this woman, not her threats, not her hate, my mom. But even as I tried to focus on that, I couldn't shake the feeling that something else was going to happen. The woman was too angry, too determined to let this go. She had promised that it wasn't over. And she seemed like the type who kept her promises. I just didn't know what she was planning. I would find out soon enough. Because about an hour before we were scheduled to land, everything changed. The woman made her move, and this time, she crossed a line that she couldn't uncross. And that's when things really got interesting. We were about an hour away from landing in Chicago when I decided to try and get some rest. My eyes were heavy from the stress and the early morning wake-up. I figured if I could just close my eyes for a few minutes, maybe I could recharge enough to deal with whatever was waiting for me at the hospital. I tilted my seat back slightly, put in my earbuds, and closed my eyes. I wasn't really listening to anything. I just wanted to block out the world for a little while. Block out the woman 2 feet away from me. Block out the tension that had been hanging over this flight like a dark cloud. For about 15 minutes, it worked. I drifted into that half-sleep. State where you're not quite awake, but not quite asleep either. It was peaceful, quiet. For the first time since I had boarded this plane, I felt almost relaxed. Then I felt something hit my shoulder. My eyes snapped open, and I pulled out my earbuds. And she had just thrown something at me. A balled-up napkin. Wake up, she said. You don't get to just ignore me and sleep. We're not done here. I blinked, still half asleep and confused. What are you doing? I've been thinking, she said, and there was something different in her voice now. Something unhinged. Like a wire had come loose somewhere in her head. I've been sitting here for hours, watching you enjoy my seat, and I've decided that I'm not going to let this stand. I refuse to let someone like you humiliate me. Ma'am, I haven't done anything to you. I've been sitting here minding my own business. Minding your own business? She laughed that cold, humorless laugh again. You've been sitting there smugly, acting like you're better than everyone. I see you. I see right through you. You think you're so clever, don't you? Getting that seat, making me look bad in front of everyone. The businessman next to her shifted uncomfortably. Ma'am, maybe you should sit down. We're going to be landing soon. Don't tell me what to do. She snapped at him. Then she turned back to me. Get up. Excuse me, I said. Get up. Get out of that seat right now. I've had enough of this charade. I shook my head slowly, not getting up. This is my seat. I don't care whose seat it is. Her voice was rising again, reaching that screeching pitch that made everyone in the cabin flinch. I want you out of that seat, now. The young flight attendant appeared, looking nervous. Ma'am, please, you need to return to your seat. The captain has turned on the seatbelt sign. I looked at the sign above us, and sure enough, it was illuminated. The plane must have started its initial descent while I was dozing. I'll return to my seat when he gives me what's rightfully mine, the woman said, pointing at me. Ma'am, I'm going to have to insist. You can insist all you want. I am sick of being pushed around by this airline. I am sick of being treated like a second-class citizen. And I am absolutely sick of this man sitting in my seat like he owns the place. That's when Diane appeared. She must have heard the commotion from the galley. Her face was set in a serious expression, all traces of her customer service smile gone. Ma'am, this is your final warning. You need to return to your seat immediately, or there will be serious consequences. Consequences? The woman laughed. What are you going to do? Throw me off the plane? Or 30,000 feet in the air? When we land, you will be met by airport security. Depending on your behavior for the rest of this flight, you may be placed on the airline's no-fly list. That seemed to get her attention. For a moment, she hesitated. I could see her calculating again, weighing her options, trying to figure out if Diane was bluffing. She wasn't bluffing, but something had snapped in this woman. Maybe it was the accumulated frustration of not getting her way. Maybe it was embarrassment from the older woman's comments earlier. Maybe she was just someone who had gone through life never hearing the word no and didn't know how to handle it. Whatever it was, she made a decision that would change everything. She moved toward me. It happened fast. 1 second she was standing in the aisle, and the next she was trying to push past the businessman to get to my seat. Her hands were reaching for me, like she was going to physically drag me out of the chair. Get up, she screamed. Get out of my seat. I raised my arms to protect myself, not knowing what she was going to do. The businessman tried to hold her back, but she shoved him aside. Her hand grabbed the collar of my hoodie and she pulled. That's when a voice cut through the chaos. Ma'am, step away from the passenger. Now, everyone froze. Standing in the aisle was a man I hadn't noticed before. He was maybe in his 40s, with a military-style haircut and a calm, commanding presence. He wasn't wearing a uniform, just regular clothes. But there was something about the way he held himself that made it clear he wasn't someone to mess with. The air marshal. He had been on the plane the whole time, watching, waiting, and now he was stepping in. The woman let go of my hoodie and spun around to face him.
Who are you?
Mind your own business. I'm a federal air marshal, he said, pulling out his badge and showing it to her. And you just committed assault on a fellow passenger. You two put your hands where I can see them and step into the aisle. The color drained from the woman's face. Whatever bravado she had been running on evaporated instantly. She suddenly looked smaller, older, scared. Assault. I didn't assault anyone. Barely touched him. You grabbed him. That's assault. You've been disrupting this flight for the past 3 hours. I've been documenting everything. He held up a small notebook. Now you can either cooperate and come with me quietly, or I can restrain you. Your choice. For a long moment, nobody moved. The entire first-class cabin was silent. Even the hum of the engine seemed quieter, like the plane itself was holding its breath. The woman's eyes darted around, looking for support, looking for someone to take her side, but there was no one. The businessman was rubbing his shoulder where she had shoved him. The older couple was watching with stern expressions. The guy with the phone had it pointed directly at her, definitely recording. She was alone. This is ridiculous, she said, but her voice had lost all its power. It came out weak, almost a whisper. I'm not a criminal. I just wanted my seat. You can explain everything to the authorities when we land, the air marshal said. Now please, step into the aisle. She did. Her legs seemed unsteady, like they might give out at any moment. The air marshal guided her to the front of the first-class cabin, near the galley, where there were some jump seats. He had her sit down, and stayed standing next to her, making sure she couldn't cause any more trouble. Diane approached my seat. Sir, are you okay? I am so sorry about what just happened. I touched my collar where the woman had grabbed me. My heart was still racing, and my hands were shaking. I'm okay, just a little shaken up. Completely understandable. Can I get you anything? Water? Something stronger? I almost laughed. Water would be great. Thank you. She brought me a bottle of water and a warm cookie that must have been from the snack service I had missed during all the chaos. Small gestures, but they meant a lot in that moment. The rest of the cabin slowly returned to normal. People went back to their books, their laptops, their conversations. But there was a buzz of energy in the air now. Everyone had witnessed something extraordinary. They were processing it in their own ways. The guy with the phone came up to my row. He leaned down and spoke quietly. Hey man, I just wanted to let you know I got everything on video. Everything she said, everything she did. If you need it for anything, legal stuff, or whatever, I've got your back. I looked at him, the stranger who had been recording the whole time, and felt a wave of gratitude. Thank you, really. I appreciate that.
No problem.
What she did to you was messed up. Someone needed to document it. He handed me a business card. I'm in tech too, actually. If you ever need anything, reach out. I took the card and nodded. He went back to his seat, and I was left alone with my thoughts. About 40 minutes later, the plane touched down in Chicago. It was a smooth landing, the kind where you barely feel the wheels hit the runway. Under normal circumstances, I would have been relieved. Happy to be home. Ready to see my family, but as we taxied to the gate, I could see flashing lights outside the window. Police cars. Airport security vehicles. They were waiting for us. The captain came on the speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay in deplaning. We have a situation that needs to be handled first. Please remain in your seats until the crew gives you the all clear. Everyone knew what situation he was talking about. The plane door opened, and 2 police officers came on board. They went straight to the front of the first-class cabin, where the woman was still sitting with the air marshal. There was a brief conversation, too quiet for me to hear. And then they escorted her off the plane. She didn't look at anyone as she walked past. Her head was down, her shoulders slumped. She looked like a completely different person from the woman who had stormed onto this flight demanding everyone bow to her will as she stepped off the plane. There was no applause, no cheering, just silence. And somehow, that felt more powerful than any celebration could have been. After she was gone, Diane made an announcement that passengers could begin deplaning. I gathered my things slowly, still processing everything that had happened. The businessman across the aisle stopped by my row. Hey, you handled that with a lot of class. I don't think I could have stayed as calm as you did. Thanks, I said. I just kept thinking about my mom. Didn't want to make things worse. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. I hope everything goes well with her surgery. Me too. As I walked off the plane, Diane stopped me at the door. Sir, wait. I have something for you. She handed me an envelope. This is from the captain and the crew. We wanted to apologize for what you experienced today. Inside, you'll find a voucher for a future flight, and we've credited 50,000 miles to your account. Your return flight has also been upgraded to first class at no charge. I stared at the envelope, not quite believing what I was hearing. You didn't have to do that. Yes, we did, Diane said. You showed incredible patience today. Not everyone would have handled it the way you did. We're grateful for that. She smiled warmly. Now, go see your mother. I hope she recovers quickly. I thanked her and walked off the plane, stepping into the jet bridge that led to the terminal. My legs felt heavy, not from exhaustion, but from the weight of everything that had just happened. But as I walked toward baggage claim, toward the exit, toward my family, I felt something else too, relief, validation, and maybe, just maybe a little bit of hope. Because sometimes, the right thing wins. Sometimes, the people who try to tear you down end up tearing themselves apart instead. And sometimes, a first-class seat is worth fighting for. I walked through the airport terminal in a daze. My legs were moving, but my mind was somewhere else entirely. Part of me was still on that plane, replaying everything that had happened. The accusations, the threats. The moment she grabbed my hoodie, the air marshals stepping in, the police lights flashing outside the window. It felt like a dream. Or maybe a nightmare that I had finally woken up from. But I couldn't think about that now. I had somewhere to be. Someone to see. I made my way through baggage claim and out to the arrivals area. My sister had texted me that she would pick me up, but when I walked through those automatic doors and scanned the crowd of waiting families and drivers holding signs, I didn't see her. Then I heard my name. I turned, and there she was. My little sister, not so little anymore at 25, standing next to a wheelchair. And in that wheelchair, wrapped in a blanket despite the warm airport air, was my mother. She wasn't supposed to be here. She was supposed to be in the hospital, resting, preparing for surgery. But there she was, looking frail and tired, but smiling at me with tears streaming down her face. I ran to her. One actually ran, something I hadn't done in an airport since I was a kid racing to see my grandparents. I dropped my knees in front of the wheelchair and wrapped my arms around her, careful not to squeeze too hard, afraid she might break. "Mom," I said, and my voice cracked. "What are you doing here? You should be resting." "I had to see you," she said, her voice weak, but full of love. I couldn't wait. "I told your sister if she didn't bring me to this airport, I was going to walk here myself." My sister rolled her eyes behind her. She's not joking. She was already trying to find her shoes when I agreed to drive her. I laughed through the tears that were now falling down my own face. "That sounds like you, Mom." We stayed like that for a long moment, just holding each other. All the stress from the flight, all the anger and frustration and hurt from dealing with that woman, it all melted away. None of it mattered anymore. The only thing that mattered was this: my mother, my family, being here together. Eventually, we made our way to the car. I pushed my mom's wheelchair while my sister carried my bag. We loaded her carefully into the front seat, folded up the wheelchair, and started the drive back to the hospital. The doctors had agreed to let her leave for a few hours to meet me, but she needed to be back before evening for pre-surgery preparations. In the car, my sister looked at me through the rearview mirror. "So how was the flight? Anything exciting happen?" I thought about telling them. About the woman, the screaming, the air marshal, all of it. But I looked at my mother, so happy just to have me there, and I decided it could wait. "It was fine," I said. "Nothing special." My mom reached back and patted my knee. "I'm so glad you're here, sweetheart. You didn't have to come all this way?" "Yes, I did, Mom. There's nowhere else I would be right now." The surgery was scheduled for the next morning. I spent that night at the hospital, sleeping in an uncomfortable chair next to my mother's bed. My sister went home to take care of her kids, but she would be back first thing in the morning. I didn't mind being alone with my mom. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. Old memories, funny stories, the trouble I used to get into as a kid. She fell asleep mid-sentence around 11. And I just sat there watching her breathe, praying that everything would be okay. The surgery took 6 hours. 6 of the longest hours of my life. My sister and I sat in the waiting room, drinking terrible hospital coffee and trying to distract ourselves with magazines and our phones. Every time a doctor walked by, we both tensed up, waiting for news. Finally, the surgeon came out. He was smiling, and I felt my entire body go weak with relief. "The surgery was successful," he said. "She's going to need a lot of rest and rehabilitation, but she's a fighter. I expect her to make a full recovery." I hugged my sister so tight, I probably left bruises. We both cried right there in the waiting room, not caring who saw us. Our mom was going to be okay. That was all that mattered. Over the next few days, I stayed in Chicago to help with my mother's recovery. I worked remotely when I could, but mostly I focused on being there for her. Bringing her meals, helping her walk to the bathroom, watching old movies with her on my laptop. It was exhausting. But it was also the most meaningful time I had spent with her in years. I had almost forgotten about the incident on the plane then. About 4 days after I arrived, my phone started blowing up. It started with a text from a coworker. "Dude, is this you?" With a link to a video. Then another text from a college friend. Then another. Then my phone started ringing. I had notifications from apps I had forgotten I even had. I clicked on the link, and there it was. The video. The guy from the plane had posted it online, and it had gone viral. The video was entitled, "Woman Has Meltdown Over First Class Seat. Gets Arrested." It had been posted 2 days ago and already had over 3 million views. I watched it in shock, seeing myself on the screen, seeing the woman screaming, seeing the air marshals step in. It was surreal, like watching a movie about my own life. The comments section was flooded. Thousands of people calling out the woman's behavior. People praising me for staying calm. People sharing their own stories about dealing with entitled passengers on flights. The video had been picked up by news websites and social media accounts. Hashtag First Class Quran was actually trending on multiple platforms. I didn't know how to feel. Part of me was uncomfortable with all the attention. I'm not someone who likes being in the spotlight. I just wanted to visit my mom, not become some kind of internet celebrity. But another part of me felt validated. All those hours of biting my tongue, staying calm, refusing to sink to her level, people had seen it. People appreciated it. Over the next few days, the story kept growing. A reporter from a local news station reached out for an interview. I politely declined. A podcast about travel horror stories wanted me as a guest. I said no thanks. I just wanted to move on with my life. But the internet wasn't done with the story yet, because someone had found the woman. I don't know who did it or how. Maybe someone recognized her from the video. Maybe they did some detective work based on details she had mentioned during her rant. But within a week, her identity was all over social media. It turned out she worked as a senior agent at a real estate company in the suburbs of Chicago. Or at least she used to work there. According to posts that started circulating, the company had received hundreds of calls and emails about the video. Clients were canceling. Companies' reviews were tanking. And a few days after the video went viral, the company announced that she was no longer with the firm. She had been let go. There was more. Someone dug up her social media accounts before she deleted them. Years of posts complaining about service workers, insulting restaurants for minor mistakes, bragging about getting people fired for inconveniencing her. It painted a picture of someone who had been behaving this way for a long time. The plane incident wasn't an isolated event. It was a pattern. I also found out about the airline's response. They had released an official statement condemning her behavior and confirming that she had been placed on their permanent no-fly list. The CEO, the one she had claimed was her personal friend, put out his own statement saying that he had never met her, that the airline does not tolerate harassment of passengers or staff. Her husband, the big lawyer she had threatened me with, according to some of the comments online, he had filed for divorce. I don't know if that's true, but it was all over the internet. Part of me felt bad for her. I know that sounds strange after everything she put me through, but watching someone's entire life fall apart, even someone who treated me terribly, it's hard not to feel something. She brought it on herself. Her actions had consequences. But still, it was a lot. Mostly, though. I just felt relieved that it was over. 2 weeks after the surgery, my mom was strong enough to leave the hospital. She still had months of recovery ahead of her, but the worst was behind her. My sister had arranged for a home health aide to help out. I had extended my remote work arrangement so I could stay a little longer. On my last night in Chicago, before heading back to Los Angeles, my mom and I sat on her couch watching the sunset through her living room window. She had a cup of tea in her hands, and she looked more at peace than I had seen her in years. "I never thanked you properly," she said. "For what? For coming. For being here. I know you have your own life, your work. But having you here meant everything to me." I felt a lump forming in my throat. "Mom, there's nothing to thank me for. You're my mother. You sacrificed everything for me and my sister growing up. This is the least I could do." She reached over and squeezed my hand. "I saw that video, you know. Your sister showed me, I groaned. Mom, I didn't want you to see that. Why not? I'm proud of you. The way you handled that woman. You stayed calm. You were respectful. You didn't let her drag you down to her level. She smiled at me. I raised you right. I laughed, wiping my eyes. Yeah, Mom, you did. We sat there in comfortable silence, watching the sky turn orange and pink and purple. I thought about everything that had happened over the past few weeks. The flight, the confrontation, the viral video, my mom's surgery and recovery. It had been the most intense period of my life, and I was exhausted in the best possible way. A few months later, I used those bonus miles the airline had given me. I booked 2 first-class tickets to Hawaii, one for me and one for my mom. Doctors cleared her to travel, and I wanted to give her something special. A real vacation. Something she had never been able to afford when she was working 2 jobs to raise us. We flew first class together, window seats, the same airline, different flight. When we boarded the plane and I helped her settle into her seat, she looked around at the wide leather chairs and the fancy amenities with wonder in her eyes. This is how you traveled to come see me? She asked. Yeah, Mom. This is it. She shook her head, smiling. You earned this. All those years of hard work. You earned every bit of it. I thought about that woman from the first flight, the one who had insisted I didn't belong. The one who had tried so hard to make me feel small, to make me doubt myself, to make me give up what was rightfully mine. She had been wrong. I did belong there. I had earned my place, not through money or status or connections, but through years of effort and sacrifice. Just like my mom had earned her place in my life, through all the love and sacrifice she had given me. The plane took off, and I watched my mother's face as we rose above the clouds. She was smiling, really smiling, the kind of smile that comes from deep inside when you're genuinely happy. And I realized something. That woman on the plane had tried to ruin my day. She had tried to take something from me. But in the end, she hadn't taken anything at all. If anything, she had given me something, a story to tell, a reminder of what really matters. In a viral video that somehow led to 50,000 free miles and a trip to Hawaii with my mom, sometimes life has a funny way of working out. I leaned back in my first-class seat, looked out the window at the endless blue sky, and smiled. Everything was going to be okay. The end.